In today's episode of the Amazon Seller Podcast, we are going to look at some of the questions that you asked us in the Amazing Freedom Facebook group and at amazingfreedom.com/ask. Stick around to hear some of the questions you may have get answered.
This is the Amazon Seller Podcast, hosted by multi-million-dollar Amazon sellers helping you launch your private label business to the next level. Find us on amazingfreedom.com or subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and YouTube.
Welcome to another episode of the Amazon Seller Podcast. And before we get into our question and answer episode that we have for you today, I just want to remind you of a couple of really cool things that we have going on right now at Amazing Freedom. So first off, if you don't know already, product images are extremely important on Amazon, right? They just are super important. They are perhaps the number one thing that is going to get your customer to click on your listing and help them to make a buying decision. But if pictures are so important, why do so many Amazon listings and even private label Amazon listings have such bad images on Amazon right now? Well, there's a couple reasons for that, really. But one of the main ones is probably just because of cost, right? Well, we've put together a solution for this with the Amazing Freedom photo service. This isn't a traditional photo service where we actually take pictures of your products and you send them to us. No, it isn't like that. Instead, it is a graphic design photo service where we take some of your basic and plain images and enhance them to look incredible. Seriously, after we are done with your images, they will stand out 100 times more to customers because of the lifestyle images that are created and the text that's added and all that to make them look great. So you can give us a plain image and we'll add in models and backgrounds and all of that. It's really cool. So just check out amazingfreedom.com/magic and you can see some examples of work we have done in the past. And honestly, the price is very affordable and just makes sense to help you convert your listings better. So again, that is amazingfreedom.com/magic to check that service out. All right, so in today's episode of the Amazon Seller Podcast, we're going to switch things up a little bit, and we're actually going to answer some of the questions that you asked us in the last week, and that a lot of Amazon sellers just are really, questioning about private labels. So we want to answer those questions. If you have a question that you would like answered in a future episode, you can go to amazingfreedom.com/ask, and you can also ask a question that we will answer on the show. So guys, let's answer some of these questions. Let's give the people what they want and really just, answer some of these questions that I think all of us had at one point or another. And these are questions that we see in our public Facebook group, the Amazing Freedom Amazon Sellers Facebook group. And then these are also questions that we see in our course group, right? That are just for our course members. And that's because they're just questions that we all have. So let's just go down the line. I'll kind of ask them to you guys, and either one of you can answer them, and we can go back and forth, or you can both answer them, whatever we think is best here. So let's just start off. Here's the first question that we have for today. Whoever wants to answer it first, Andy or Leron. When starting off...
Are we buzzing in?
Yeah, but get your buzzers ready. So when starting off in private label, do you recommend a category like kitchen, for example, that may give someone a greater chance of success to focus on, or one to avoid that has more of a risk, and why? So do you guys focus on a certain category? Do you think many categories are viable, and are there any that you would just shy away from? What's your opinion on that?
So I think for a new seller, there are probably some categories that I would probably steer away from unless I had prior experience. So there are categories where you can have more potential issues with products, and being new, I would avoid them. It doesn't mean I would avoid them forever, but probably for my first product, I might consider. So for example, something with, I would say, more like advanced electronics, for example, is something that I might avoid as a new seller just because of potential issues of, things not working properly. What kind of, do you need a UL certification or not? What's really required for it? So that's probably an area that I wouldn't start off with. And then there are other categories that I would say are also more difficult. So for example, I've done some stuff, some products in shoes. It's not particularly something that I would recommend just because you have sizing issues. You also need significantly more capital if you're going to launch different colors and different sizes. So there are definitely categories that I would avoid starting out. The categories that I feel like people are good to start off with. Kitchen is one. Kitchen is a very, very big category. There are a lot of potential items in the kitchen category. You have sports and outdoors. You have baby. You have even I've seen people do well with office products, scientific and industrial, home and kitchen, home and kitchen. So there's a lot of categories. Toys and games, I think that's an underutilized category where there's a lot of potential. I feel like a lot of sellers don't go into the toys and games category because of the potential liability, but there are a lot of different products there that you can import that don't have the kind of liability that we're all afraid of. So those are all good categories to start off in.
And when you say, unless you had some kind of prior experience, I mean, if someone was perhaps working as an engineer or some kind of, something with electronics for, in the past with their job, and they have the experience and the know-how and connections, maybe even, then that's kind of the exception, right? If you have the experience and you've worked with that in the past, then maybe you could cross some of the hurdles that an average seller who's never dealt with that kind of thing would experience, right?
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And the other thing is also don't necessarily shy away from any particular category because the chances are, so even with electronics, so let's say you do have some kind of, great idea or great potential product. If there's a lot of potential, if there aren't a lot of sellers, selling it, if it's not too saturated, I would say, go for it and try it. Don't, put all your money into it. Start up with something that's a smaller level of risk and go for it, because that means probably other sellers aren't going into that item or category either. So there might be potential. So, I think my philosophy when it comes to finding products and categories is kind of, when people zig, you want to zag, right? You don't want to go where everyone else is going. So, I wouldn't flat out say, I'm sure there's very successful private label products in every single category on Amazon. Some are more tricky. So, the ones I mentioned before are all good to start off with, where you may have less potential problems.
Right. And you just made me think of something when you said the zig and zag, and this doesn't exactly relate to the categories, but, for a long time, for the last couple of years, a lot of private label coaches or teachers have said stuff like, only import stuff that can fit in the palm of your hand, right, for size, or that's lighter than a pound. And so because of that, we got a lot of new private label sellers who were importing very light and small, cheaply made products. And a lot of those areas kind of got saturated because of that, because it was so easy. And I know we, like, a lot of times say, if a product has to be imported by boat, it's almost like a bonus, because those of us who are willing to take the time to get set up with a customs broker and a freight forwarder and aren't afraid to ship stuff by boat, which, can be a little scary at first, but if you go back and listen to one of the first couple podcasts we did, actually, we talk about this process and kind of lay it out for you and how it doesn't have to be that complicated. If you're willing to do that, then I think you have an advantage over, 80% of new private label sellers who kind of just won't even look at products that need to be imported by boat. So I know that was kind of a side thought, but when you said zig and zag, it made me think of that.
And it's really good advice. And so, for example, a lot of people think that let's say the kitchen category is, like you said, very saturated, right? A lot of products are saturated in that category. But that's why when I look at kitchen, I look at, like, how can I make products different? How can I look at oversized products. I look at products that do need to be imported by boat. I look at how I can make design changes to products. And that's where the opportunity is. The opportunity is in being somewhat, innovative and not just going into the same product that everybody else goes into. And, the question that I always go back to with a product is, why would somebody buy from me? Why would somebody buy my product versus what's already there? in the marketplace. And it could just be because you have amazing pictures and better listing. You know, that could be a reason. It doesn't mean your product has to be all that different from everything, but you have to be able to answer that question of why would somebody buy from me? And price should not be the answer. For sure.
Right. And I don't think that we can say I don't think anyone can truly say that the home and kitchen category or any of them are completely saturated. I mean, home and kitchen category has, you know, it is a massive category where there's hundreds of thousands of selling listings that are selling well because there's so much demand right there. It's a really broad category. So yeah, you can say certain niches of the home and kitchen category are saturated, but I think you can say that with pretty much any category, and there's still opportunity there if you look at the things that you just said, right? Like how you can actually improve and make things better. So, all right, good.
Well,
Andy,
let me add
yeah.
that, Nate, because I think it's important too to point out that if you have experience, right, in a certain industry. So I'm thinking of a good friend that we have that was a chef. He was in the food industry for 15 years. He's going to have an advantage over certain types of kitchen products, right? And so, you know, as you're looking at, you know, I know the question is, do you have a category that you would recommend? I think what we would say is you definitely, if you have experience, you know, in a certain area, maybe you have janitorial experience or you've worked in that industry, you might have some very good knowledge in industrial category, you know, that could actually give you an advantage in understanding certain types of products that other sellers, you know, necessarily wouldn't have. And of course, always we say, right, the riches are in the niches. You know, I think that's a phrase that Liron coined a few weeks ago, and that's totally true. And so no matter what category you go in, you always want to drill down, right, to the niches, because like Liron says, that's where the riches are.
The riches are in the niches. Yeah, I like it.
I didn't make it.
Right, so,
I didn't make it up for the record, but it is a good phrase.
Okay, we better clear that up. Liron didn't make that up, but I mean, it does apply. The riches are in the Amazon niches. Maybe you can make that up, right?
Right. There we go.
That's your own unique one. All right. So, okay, I think that answers the first question pretty good. We better move on here because we got a couple more. So let's move to the second question. Either one of you again, how have your guidelines for choosing a good product, private label product, changed over the course of your time of selling private label products? Or to put it another way, what things would you look at now or, you know, differently than you would when you first started? So either one of you, Andy, if you want to go first with that.
For me, I think as I've sold longer, I'm getting a better understanding of keywords and how important a role that plays in identifying potential private label products. And so, you know, for folks that have been in SEO, they're probably like, duh, keywords drive everything, right? When it comes to clicks. But for those that, like me, who started out selling retail arbitrage and haven't been in the internet space for, you know, a long time, it's become I'm getting a better understanding of when I see a potential product and then doing research on the keywords that are going to drive that product.
And can you help us just understand a little bit better? So if we're a newer seller or we're maybe an experienced seller, but we're not real familiar with keywords, I mean, when you say you're looking at keywords differently than you were before, are you just trying to get a better understanding of those keywords before you move on a product?
Yeah, so I want to know what keyword I'm going to try to rank for that potential product. And so when I put that in the Amazon search bar, it's going to give me an idea of how tough the competition is and how hard it's going to be for me to try to rank for that product. So that's just one area, you know, when it comes to better understanding of keywords.
Okay, nice. Liron, any tips on that?
As far as keywords go, well, the thing you need to understand is the relationship between demand and supply. So when it comes to keywords, is how many people are searching for a particular keyword versus how many listings on Amazon are there, how many good listings are there, how many merchant fulfilled listings are there that you can beat by just being FBA and Prime eligible. So I think understanding keywords and how it affects sales, as well as what the supply of products out there is sort of key in determining if your product can have success.
All right, good. All right, so let's go to the next question here. This seller asks about analyzing products and the number of sales that they have per month when you're looking at, one of the tools that estimate sales like Jungle Scout. They're basically trying to get an understanding. If you see a listing that's a merchant fulfilled, right? They're not FBA and it's selling well, like they give the example, maybe selling 200 or 250 sales a month based on that tool. But you think you can bring, a similar or a better product to market, and you're going to sell that product FBA, right? Through Amazon's Fulfilled by Amazon service. How are you supposed to estimate how much better or more sales that you can get, when you're bringing that new product? Is there a way that you in your mind would try to, justify how many sales you think you're going to get? Or is this kind of not even a way that someone should think when they're bringing a product in?
No, so I think it's a good way to think, and looking at the estimated sales, I think is smart. I mean, I look at both estimated sales and revenue ultimately, because if I'm selling a $10 product, I don't really care if it's selling 100 units a month, because I'm not interested in bringing a product to market that's selling $1,000 a month. Yet, if that product is priced at $100, I might be interested. So I think you need to look at sales, but also revenue. But when I try to gauge an idea of what to bring in, I don't just look at one product, but I look at, like Andy was talking about, understanding keywords and what keywords am I targeting and am I going to try to get ranked for in the first page. And if I see a very healthy looking first page, and what I mean by healthy looking first page, I mean, I see that the revenue is very well distributed among a lot of the first page listings. It's not just going to the first two or three, right? Because I don't know that I'm going to be able to rank two or three, but I think I could do a good enough job with my listing, my images, my conversion, my pricing, where I can get to the first page and stay there. So if I see a very healthy looking first page, I think that's a good sign. If I see a first page that is very fragmented in terms of, only one or two listings doing really well, then I'm not even sure that I'm actually really looking at the right keyword. So what do I mean? Let's say I'm searching for the keyword barbecue gloves, and the only one listing in the middle of the page is doing really well, right? So that listing is probably not getting its traffic and money from that keyword barbecue gloves. It's getting it from somewhere else. And then I would want to run a reverse ASIN search on that listing in order to really understand it. So understanding the keywords and understanding what your main keyword is, can you rank for it, and how is the revenue distributed among the first page is sort of important for me as a factor to decide whether or not I bring a product in, not just looking at one particular listing.
Awesome. All right. So this next question comes from James. James asked this on amazingfreedom.com/ask. And again, if you have a question you'd like us to answer in a future show, you can also ask it there as well. Leron, I'm going to ask you this. James asks, is it better to use variations for your private label product or to separate the variations into entirely new pages to take up more room on the Amazon search page? So I know this is a question that a lot of sellers have had at one point or another, and I've thought about it a lot too. So what is your personal opinion about what you think is actually better for sales? And then also maybe tell us what Amazon would prefer really when it comes to variations.
Right. Okay. So let's talk first about what Amazon prefers and what makes sense. So variations are different as far as what you can offer. They could be size, they could be color. So they could be like a style variation. So I think if you're selling an item and you have a black and a blue, probably makes more sense to have it as a variation. If you have something that's more materially different, let's say sizing wise, for example, then you can go either way with it. So the pros and cons of both, right? So we talked about in the question, I think he's asking you, well, you could take up more real estate on the page. That's the advantage of having separate listings. And the advantage of variations is that a customer can come and they have a choice, an option. You might convert better, increases your conversion rate, increases your ranking, your reviews are all aggregated together. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a yes or no answer. So one thing that I've seen people do, and then I'm going to test myself as I aggregate more reviews on some of my listings with variations, is to start off a listing with variations. the benefit is that when you're launching a product and you're doing some kind of maybe a giveaway or something to get some initial traction, you can do it with, you know, any one of the products on your variation, maybe with the product that's maybe with the item that's cheaper, that's going to cost you less money, maybe with the item that's not, the color it's not going to be as popular, and then get that to rank. And when people click on it, they'll see your other colors. So there's a benefit of initially launching with variations. And when you give people choices, they tend to, you know, have more choices, and then they make a choice when they're not overwhelmed, right? If you have a few variations. So you can start off with variations, and then as you get reviews on each one of those variations and you aggregate them, and it's maybe, let's say you have 10 reviews on a variation, you could try splitting it off. And then now you're going to take up more real estate, get it to rank, and now both your products are going to have reviews and will be well positioned. So I would say starting off, better to start with variations, and then you can consider splitting the variations later on once you've gotten reviews on the variations, because the reviews will move with the variation to the new listing.
And this is kind of tough. I honestly don't think there's any one right or wrong answer. I think it kind of depends on the situation, on the product, on the competitiveness of the keyword you're trying to rank for, right? And something to consider, I think, you know, a benefit of keeping them together is a lot of times Amazon customers just go with whatever's, you know, number one, right at the top. So if you can get your product to the first spot of search, or at least up there, I think that's better a lot of times than trying to get more real estate. Just because if you have, you know, what would you rather have, one listing that's in the number one spot or 5 listings that are on the second page? Well, every time I'd rather have the one that's up at the top, right? Because customers are actually seeing that. But it totally depends. There's situations where I think it makes more sense for one or the other. But I think you put it well there, Liran.
And I think the answer comes down to testing, right? So you don't have to know beforehand. Set it up as variations, split it off. At some point when you have reviews, if it sells better, taking up more real estate, increasing your overall sales, good. If not, bring it back together. You can bring back, you call it, you know, the children to the parent listing anytime, and separate them anytime.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Good information. All right. This is another question from amazingfreedom.com/ask. This is from Alon or Alon. They ask, can you share your thoughts on how search term fields should be filled up? There are many theories out there. How should you fill them up? So I believe they're talking about back-end search terms, right? The search term fields, there's 5 of them. Liran, you probably should give your thoughts on this. Being the keyword master that you are, what would be your theory on how search terms should be filled?
Well, so the one thing is that search terms don't need to be repeated in the back end. So let's say your product is barbecue gloves. Well, first, if you have it in the title, you don't need to put it in the back end. But let's say you're going to put barbecue gloves. You don't need to do barbecue gloves and then put in grilling barbecue gloves and then put in other terms. The term only needs to be used once. I would generally put terms that are not in your title or your bullets, because we know those are indexed already. So what I would put is terms that, you know, you weren't able to sort of sprinkle into your title or bullets that you feel are important, that people are searching for. And particularly things that you may not want to include in the listing. So if your barbecue gloves are red, you still want people to find your product if they're looking for black barbecue gloves. But you're not going to put that your barbecue gloves are black in the listing. So you're going to put that on the back end. So you want to put, you know, all the keywords that aren't your major keywords that you were not able to add into a title or your bullet points, you want to aggregate into the back end. And at least right now, it seems like Amazon, I mean, we've seen various things. Sometimes the keywords are indexed, sometimes they're not indexed. But one of the things that has sort of been proven is that even though you have 5 slots, each slot has a 1,000 character limit. Amazon generally will not index all 5,000 characters. Generally seen only the first maybe 2,000 or so. So put your most important keywords in those first, 2.5 lines. And again, you don't need to be repetitive. So I think it's still difficult to even come up with 2,000 or 2,500 characters of really good keywords in your back end. So just focus on finding, you know, through various tools, all the keywords that you weren't able to put in your title and bullets that would be that would be relevant to your product or to sort of related products that people are looking for.
Awesome. All right. Jason asked this in the Amazing Freedom Facebook group, actually. He asked, what do you need from suppliers so that you can design a private label box? So like packaging, I believe he's talking about. How to design the box and tips for this, like who to use and steps for getting the whole process right. So we actually covered this, I think, in the last episode of the Amazon Seller Podcast, but maybe Andy, if you can give us a brief, talk again of how you usually go through this process.
Sure. So first, most of the factories there are going to have designers that work for them. Most of them are going to have boxes that they've already designed for other sellers, and so you can ask them if they have any examples of prior packaging that they've made for similar products. Usually they're going to have samples or examples that they can show you. And, from that, then you can ask them if, basically if you want to use similar packaging or similar design, you can give them the copy. And a lot of times their own in-house designers will be able to, put on the box what you want to have put on. Basically take a box that they've already made and put your copy on it. So that's one way.
Right. And if you want to get, if they can't do that, or you want to get a little more detailed to what, more unique to your actual logo or whatever. I think in the last podcast episode, we said you can find people on Fiverr or 99designs.com. Those are both sites that you can utilize the designers there and just ask your supplier what format they need that file or that packaging, because there's, different packaging types as well, and dies and cuts that they may need. And you can, tell your designer then what format you need it in. All right. And we have another question here about basically managing time from Jeff once you have more than 5 to 10 products, right? So once you start building up a portfolio of private label products, it can be kind of difficult, I guess, to start managing your time. So this is maybe geared towards a little bit more experienced seller or a seller who's, also doing wholesale or some other kind of selling. How do you manage your time? Is there any kind of strategies or tips that you can give? Maybe both of you give some of your tips that you feel help you to organize this or help you with your time.
Sure. So for me, like I usually check my Amazon account like about 4 times a day. So I'll usually check it right when I first wake up in the morning. Usually check it around lunchtime, then usually around 3 or 4, and then usually before I go to bed at night. The reason why I do that is, I'll check different SKUs. Obviously, I'll address any customer questions. And for private label sellers, I personally think the biggest thing is you never want to go out of stock. And so, basically on a daily basis, my top selling SKUs, I'm always looking at, like how many weeks out do I have of current stock? And then thinking in my head, when do I need to place that order so I'm not going to go out of stock? And for me, that's basically how I manage my account. Again, with the most important thing that you never want to go out of stock.
And what about some of these things Jeff asks, with like shipping, Amazon listings, launching, and listing? Are there ways that have you outsourced some of these processes, or what are you doing to, are you still doing all this yourself? What allows you to launch multiple products? I know both of you bring in new products almost on either a weekly or monthly basis. So are you still doing all this yourself? Or are you outsourcing? What helps you in that regard?
So for me, I do outsource a lot of it. I outsource my photography. I outsource my copywriting and listing creation. So I outsource a lot of it. I still, even though I outsource, let's say keyword research, I'll also do my own keyword research, but I do outsource a lot of it. I mean, for me, it's not really a time crunch to have. I probably have over, 40 or 50 private label products, some with variations, lots of SKUs. For me, it's not really so time consuming, I would say, to manage it. Once you have a listing up and running and you've done the initial work of launching and getting your photography and everything else, all you're doing is reordering. So like Andy said, the only thing you really need to stay up with those listings is reordering, checking your reviews. There's alerts you can get. For example, Feedback Genius gives me alerts on any negative reviews, for example, so I can look at that and comment. But it's not really such a time-consuming process. You can set up alerts also in Seller Central in your FBA inventory, where if you go to a certain amount of units left in stock, it will alert you so that you can reorder. So for me, it's not really, I think I could have 500 listings and still manage it, or maybe have a VA just look at when I need to reorder. But it's not such a time-consuming process for me. I guess that's because I outsource a lot of the listing creation process. And then I do set up the promotions to get a listing to rank and going, but for me, it's not a major time-consuming issue.
And what I would say is, if you have something that you really don't like doing or hate doing, like writing listings, I don't think any of us really enjoy writing our own listings, right, or taking our own photos. So, or we're just not that good at it. So if you have something like that you really don't like to do, I think it's smart to outsource it and focus on the things that you are good at or you do enjoy doing. If you enjoy researching or actually negotiating with the suppliers, or ranking your products and working on PPC or whatever it is, or maybe you hate PPC, but I think you should really try to focus on the things you enjoy, and then find high quality services or people to outsource the things you don't.
I would add to that the reason why, I could write listings. I think I'm an okay copywriter. I'm not excellent or amazing at it, but I could write my own listings. But the reason I don't do it is because the work and the reason why I don't do my own prep or things like that is because I don't want to focus on the things that I could pay somebody else $10, $15, $20, $30, $40, $50 an hour to do. I want to focus on the tasks that are going to make $500 an hour. So what are those tasks? Those tasks are product sourcing, for example, right? I don't think I can really outsource it in a very really meaningful way. So I do my own product sourcing. My PPC, for example, I do my own PPC because I think that's an area that you can scale and optimize. So focus, in whatever you're doing in your business, focus on the tasks that are going to make you $100 to $500 to $1,000 an hour, as opposed to, the $10 an hour tasks, which is why, for example, we have our imaging Photoshop service where we can add lifestyle photos or text to your images. And that's why I use that to make my images better. I won't do it. Even if I knew how to do it myself, I wouldn't want to do it. And we can post a link to that in the notes.
Right. So that's amazingfreedom.com/magic. Anyone that's interested in that. And yeah, I'm okay with Photoshop, I'll admit, but for what our service can do for a low price would probably take me 10 hours to do, right? And it's just not worth it. And I think that's really good advice, what you said, to focus on the things that will make you $100, $200, $1,000 an hour. I think too many Amazon sellers get caught up with the $10 an hour task. They want to do everything themselves. And so they're like de-stickering items. Now this might go to like more like retail, not necessarily private label, but maybe, putting on their own labels, right? Even your private label products, if they didn't have their supplier do it, they might want to label everything themselves, or polybag everything themselves, because they don't want to pay someone 25, 50 cents a unit to do it. And yeah, it saves you money. But how much money are you losing by focusing on those $10 an hour, $15 an hour tasks instead of focusing on those $500 an hour tasks? And I think it's kind of a mindset that you have to get into. It doesn't always happen overnight, but I think it's really important for those who have a growth mindset, who are looking to grow and scale their business, to focus on. So let's just answer one or two questions here. We're running a little long already, but maybe just two more here. Christine asked about, hijackers and counterfeits is becoming a real issue. Any notes or advice that you can give us on hijackers and counterfeits and how to combat that, Liron?
Yes. So essentially, I have sort of a two-step process for dealing with hijackers, and then I can give you some additional advice. So the first thing is, you want to contact the hijacker directly and send them a cease and desist. You can search probably various Facebook groups or online for like a template for a cease and desist, and email them a cease and desist to remove themselves from your listing for your branded item. And I would say about 50% of the time that works. The next step is if after 24 hours they don't get off the listing, what I do is what Amazon wants you to do is Amazon wants you to place a test order to basically order from the seller and then show them an image, show them pictures of the product where it doesn't have your brand or logo or it's a different item. So now I hate doing this because if the seller is from China, then it's going to take about a month, maybe 2 weeks to a month before I get that product and before I can get them off the listing. So I don't want to stop there. So what I do is I order the item from my personal Amazon account, and then I email the seller again, and I email them with, I tell them, I just ordered the product. Here is the order number. Once I get the item, I'm going to report it to Amazon that it's not the trademarked branded item with our logo. However, if you remove yourself from the listing within the next 24 hours, I will request that you cancel my order. So that has worked for me 100% of the time when the cease and desist has not worked. If that doesn't work, then your next step would be to file probably an IP infringement claim. There's a form that you can search for to file against that seller, and see if that works and open a case with Amazon. But the thing is that Amazon ultimately will want you to have proof, and so.
Right. And I was just going to say, you want to be a little bit careful in filing those infringement forms because there is a chance that the seller really could be selling your product if they had maybe bought your product or received it if you did a giveaway and they got your product and they're selling it new. They might not necessarily be counterfeiting it or, or trying to sell a fake product. So you do want to be a little bit careful, even though I know that's not the case most of the time. Filling out those infringement cases is kind of serious. They say right on there, but you're basically promising you're telling the truth. So take that seriously. But I think it is a good step if you're pretty confident in and you have the proof.
And what I would say is pay attention to how many units they have in stock. Right.
Right.
You can add the item to your cart, change it to $999, and it will show you how many they have in stock. If they put in if they're merchant filling and they put in 500, then they didn't get it off buying from you.
Right.
And then go ahead and file that claim because you're the only seller and the only manufacturer of that item. If they have 5 units in stock, just let it go. Let them sell. Maybe they got it from you or whatever. Let them sell. But chances are that's usually not the case, and so you'll want to. I found 100% success with emailing the sellers. And if you do open an infringement claim and then try to open some cases with Amazon, there's a small chance that they might gate your brand, which one of my brands was gated, but it wasn't. I don't know. I did file some claims, not claims, but I did open some cases with Amazon prior to that. I did open some cases with Amazon prior to that about hijackers, but I have a couple other brands that are not gated. But that it also goes for saying to make your products unique, not really like generics. The more unique your item, the less likely it is you're going to have a hijacker on it also.
Right. And I really like that advice you gave about placing the order and then telling them that you're going to report it and how effective that is. That's a really good tactic, I think. One last question here. Your opinion, Liran. When should someone start? And I know this, everyone could probably give a different answer for this. I don't think there's a right or wrong. Again, we'll just get your personal opinion since I think you're a pretty smart guy. When should someone start investing in courses or conferences? What financial point and versus putting that money towards more inventory? What's kind of your opinion at how someone should approach that?
So for me, I mean, there's two sides to the coin, right? So for example, we just recently had somebody who signed up for our private label course, and they've had before signing up, they've had 2 private label products they've imported that have not sold well. And they said to us, those were mistakes. I wish I had your course before I imported those products, right? So that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is that you're not going to make any sales unless you have inventory. right? So when I started with retail and online arbitrage, and I bought Chris Green's book, which I think was over $100 at the time, so it's not a cheap book, but not a ton of money. And I invested, and I started learning that way, and then I did ended up buying courses. My feeling is that you want to have the education so that you know what you're doing. So I think it's okay to start out by investing, but don't invest a ton of money. You can buy books, you can look on YouTube, you can listen to podcasts. And if you think you're serious about the business, I don't think it's bad to invest in a course. Just make sure you're buying the right course, something that has like a money back guarantee. And if you don't feel you've gotten value out of it, then ask for your refund. If you think you've gotten value, then that could end up saving you money down the line. So I think it's a balance between, you don't want to invest everything you have in courses or keep buying the next shiny object, but investing in one thing and sticking to it and then implementing, I think is fine.
Awesome. And Andy, I don't know if you want to real quick just give your opinion as well. When you think someone should, start investing in courses, or Liran kind of touched on courses. So let's get your opinion on conferences. When people should start investing on conferences, meaning at what financial point versus putting that money towards more stock. What would be your opinion specifically on conferences, since Liran talked about courses already and training material?
Yeah, I think, immediately the value that you're going to get going to conferences is meeting other sellers. And when you begin to network and talk with other sellers and seeing them face to face, you're going to learn things. You're going to learn best practices and strategies that you can't learn from Facebook, that you can't learn from the Amazon seller forums. And for me, I always say this, one of the biggest ways that I've been able to grow my business has been connecting with other sellers and hearing their stories, hearing their adventures, hearing how they've made mistakes, which, when you hear people that make mistakes, it helps you, when you face those type of situations. And so, the conferences, and they're really low cost. Every conference in our space, it does not cost that much money. And so you're gonna see a return on that immediately.
I would add to that if you just look, the three of us here, I was in Andy's course. Nate learned from his uncle. Andy, he was introduced to the business. We were constantly learning from each other. So, I met Andy through networking and through, going to a conference and getting involved on Facebook. So I would say that there's a lot of value in going to conferences more than the conference itself. A lot of the times it's the, like Andy said, it's the networking.
Right. All right. Yeah, all good points. And if you don't want to put any money forward and you want to start somewhere, you can always, and you should, start with our free private label course that we have, right? You can go to amazingfreedom.com/smart, and we have a free private label course that we've put together. So you should definitely check that out because it's free, no cost there. But I think all those points that both Liran and Andy made are really important. They both make sense. And it's all about balance and making sure that you take a good look at what makes most sense in your current situation. So I think we're out of time for today. We answered some really good questions here, and we'll do this again soon, right? It was really beneficial. I think I liked this episode. And if you have questions that you want to have answered, again, you can go to amazingfreedom.com/ask to get those to us so that the next time that we do this, we can answer those. And hey, don't forget, if you haven't yet, you're going to want to check out our free private label course that we've put together called the Smart Private Label Course. You can get to that by going to amazingfreedom.com/smart, and you can check out that free course that gives you a foundational look at the private label process of selling on Amazon and what our basic strategies are. Also, come hang out with us in the Amazing Freedom Amazon Sellers Facebook group and catch us on the next episode of the Amazon Seller Podcast.
You've been listening to the Amazon Seller Podcast. Make sure to subscribe and join us next time for another look at how to dominate the Amazon marketplace.